the other day, my kids found out that one of our friends had never flown in an airplane before. And they were shocked. Not because they were judging her. Here she is, 40 years old, and never flown before. But because to them, flying was so normal because they've been doing it since they were babies. We were in the Air Force, for heaven's sakes. Like, we flew to see family. We flew to travel. We flew. And so it was not something out of the ordinary for them. So it wasn't arrogance. It was innocence. They simply couldn't comprehend that something so normal to them was the first for someone else. And how often do we think the same thing in leadership? We assume that others think like we do, that they work like we do, or they value the same things. We assume that what's normal for us is normal for everyone. And after this realization, their focus shifted. They would ask her about the experience, what she thought about it, how it made her feel. Is she excited? Does she have gum for the descent? When they realized that was normal for them and it was new for her, they shifted their questions to her. They shifted in the experience. And the same thing happens in communication. When we discover that another person's perception or perspective is different, we get curious. And it made me think about where else in my life have I been downplaying? Simply because when it comes easy or because it's normal. Because if it's easy for me, I just assume that it's easy for everyone else too, right? What if that's not true? What if the very things that I brush off, the very things that you brush off are actually the places that we're most gifted, the places where God's wired us to lead from? So I want to ask you something. Have you ever gotten frustrated because someone didn't get it or doesn't get it or hasn't gotten it? Are you solving problems in real time and other people are still trying to figure out what the problem is? Or do you find yourself wondering, like, why is this so hard for them? Am I missing something? Or maybe even you've downplayed your ability to bring calm to chaos, your gift of reading the room or your instinct to take initiative just because you assumed it wasn't special. So I had a client, we'll call her Lauren, and she's a high-level director who often felt that she had to soften her voice in meetings. In fact, that's one of the things she came to me to work on is she wanted to be heard. She wanted a promotion. She had the confidence, but she also had been told she's intimidating throughout her whole career and really her whole life. So she learned to hold back. She learned to sugarcoat. She would often say that I have to keep my thoughts to myself unless someone else brought it up first. But then one day during a really tense budget meeting, things were just getting swept under the rug and everyone was dancing around the real issue. And finally, she spoke up, firm, clear, direct, and confident. And she named the elephant in the room. And you know what happened? The CFO turned to her afterward and said, "Thank you. We needed that. No one else had the guts to say it." And so that moment flipped a switch for her. She realized that her boldness wasn't a liability. It was leadership. It was her strength. And her voice created the clarity. She was able to say the things that others couldn't say, didn't want to say, and didn't have the confidence to say. It didn't crush people. It actually protected them from bad decisions. It kept everyone in this meeting from actually wasting their whole time because they were going down the wrong path. And when she told me that she always thought she needed to be less, but that day she saw that speaking up was part of her purpose. And so how many times do we do this? We downplay things that are, normal to us. We sugarcoat it because we don't want to step on toes, or things that we avoid or just flat out ignore our intuition. We don't say the word. And I want to talk about 3 of the blind spots of leadership assumption. These 3 things not only have I been through, that most of my clients and that we are told are normal, or we're assumed that they're normal, and they're really not. So the first one is the normalization trap. Just because you were raised around a vision setting or had early leadership exposure doesn't mean everyone has to. And let's take it a step further. Let's look at you Generation Xers. Let's look at the generation gap, okay? I'm a firm believer that every generation has its strengths and has valuable resources. Like our younger generations can be more efficient and they're not afraid to take risks. However, our older generations are not afraid to try things or work hard or get uncomfortable. So there's balance, right? So these Generation Xers, me, you, most of you who are listening, you know what it's like to raise yourself. Like, I had good parents, and I know that we did things that we survived things. We had our latchkey kids, and we raised ourselves to do things that the younger generation are not taught. And let's face it, we even look back now and realize that we were asked to grow up way too fast. Then on the other side, to make up for that, to change the generational gaps, we are in the generational traumas, then some of the Generation Zers, the Gen Z, who feel like they're still growing up. They're still trying to learn what it's like to do things on their own, to act independently, because so many of things as Gen Xers, we did on our own, we wanted to do with our kids. And so a lot of these Gen Zers are growing up and not knowing how to be independent, or they will take a problem, but they don't know how to break it down before or where to start. So our normal and what we should know doesn't translate. Their normal and what we should know doesn't translate. And so this normalization trap that we have, just because we're around it, doesn't mean everyone was. Just because we were exposed to it. This is one of the things that growing up overseas, there are still so many things that I'm like, yeah, I didn't experience that. Oh, that's not how I grew up. Simply because I grew up same time, different location. And so number 2 is the strength blindness. If you think, doesn't everyone do this? They probably don't. Your ease is your edge. Your ease is your edge. And it's the lie that says if it's easy, it's not valuable. And that couldn't be further from the truth. It is a lie. If it's easy, it's not valuable, is wrong. If it's easy, it's because it's an area that we have focused on. It's a strength. It's where we've learned from. It's some of our decisions have been around it. Your ease might be someone else's breakthrough. Your strength blindness, something that comes easy to you, by explaining it or walking through with somebody who doesn't get it, maybe the breakthrough they need to really understand what they're missing or how to get through to the next thing. And then finally, the perception gap. We can't lead well if we're only seeing through our lens. Great leaders develop a curiosity about the lenses of others. We see things from our experiences, our decisions, our education, our background. We see things through our own set of sunglasses. The thing is that you can have 2 people in the same household who have very different perceptions on things and perspectives. And could you imagine if you are working next to somebody who grew up in a different country or a different state? Because let's face it, even within states or regions of states, Northern California is very different than Southern Cal. In Oklahoma, we have the cities and we have the rural areas. No, not going there. It's just different. There's the strengths, there's the weaknesses, there's the blind spots, there's the ease, the things that we talk about. But this perspective gap, that if we don't look at that and understand that, oh, this is why I'm seeing it this way, and we don't get curious about the lenses, the experience of others, then we're not going to be able to lead well. And so your strengths aren't common, they're core to your calling. And we mistake our ease for everyone else's norms, but if your ease is exactly what makes you exceptional. And then also we got to realize that leadership isn't about making clones. It's about cultivating clarity. It's about creating culture. It's about pulling in multiple people's strengths to make the team grow. And so once you step back and understand your own wiring and others, communication flows more smoothly. It actually starts to flow, and there's less hardships, there's less tension, and your strength becomes tools versus blind spots. When you understand, okay, this comes easy to me because, then you're able to use it to help others, to grow the culture, to expand the strengths of your team instead of a blind spot that you hold to yourself, instead of downplaying it. So you'll build trust and efficiency, which is 2 keys in a thriving culture, by understanding these 3 blind spots of leadership assumption. We can't fall into the normalization trap. Just because it's normal for you doesn't mean it's normal for everyone. Again, you're not wrong. I'm not wrong. It might be something that's just a different perspective, which goes into the perspective gap of we're seeing it through our experience, our paradigm, our understanding. And then there's this strength blindness that if it is easy, we think it's not valuable or we downplay it. And that is not true. We need to understand your easy and we understand my easy. And together we can work together to make the whole project easier. And so, what are 3 ways? What are practical takeaways? What can we do to build awareness as a leader? Because these 3 gaps are so normal in day to day. They're so normal because let's face it, like there's so many differences. It's hard to consider all of them. But the thing is, we don't have to consider all of them. We just have to get curious. So the 3 ways we can build awareness as a leader is we can ask more and assume less. When in doubt, get curious. Ask how they see the situation. Ask about their experiences. Ask what is seen through them. What do you see the problem is? Because even having one project, based on our core motivations, based on our core foundations, we see the solution from different angles. And so when you ask more and assume less, 1, it reduces the heaviness, the weight of being a leader because it's not your responsibility to come up with the answers. Sometimes it is your responsibility to throw it out there and see collectively, okay, how can we make this the best result or the best outcome possible? So when I be curious and ask how they see the situation, and then name your strengths. Just because it's easy doesn't mean it's not valuable. Own your strengths. Own your zone of genius, own your unique wiring, own your core values, own your core motivations, because it only brings breadth and depth to situations. Even as your strength, you'll know when it's time to lean in or retreat a little bit and let someone else take the lead. You'll know where you can show up authentically when you name your strengths. And then also invite diverse perspectives. Intentionally get out of your own norm. Learn about others, whether it's the person, the cubicle next to you, the office next to you, the co-working space next to you, even your own family. Intentionally go outside of your norm to discover the different perspectives and allow people to give you their perspective without getting any certain way about it. Just listen for information, listen to understand, listen to hear their heart. Because when we recognize our own assumptions and strengths, we're able to see ourselves more clearly. When we see ourselves more clearly, we can lead with clarity. We can lead through our motivations and what the ultimate outcome we want to achieve. When we see ourselves clearly, we can choose to bring other people because there isn't that competition. There isn't that fear of, will I get this right? And then also when we understand other people, we honor that others have a different lens and lead from wholeness and not sameness. We don't have to both believe in the same thing. We don't have to both see things the same way. We don't have to be the same in order to grow. In fact, it's much better if we lead from wholeness instead of sameness, because if we were all the same, we would lose out the depth and the fun, because everyone brings different perspectives and just the curiosity and excitement. If everyone was the same in your workplace, in your home, in your friend group, how creative would that workplace be? Would your home be? Would your friend group be? If you're all doing the exact same thing, where's the excitement? Where's the new? Where's the bold ideas if we're all leading from the exact same perspective? So I just want to remind you that self-awareness is not self-indulgent. It's a leadership skill. And without it, we build teams in our image instead of activating their strengths. We have these unwritten expectations that we haven't expressed and these unreasonable expectations that we can't even uphold simply because we are assuming that they understand our perspective, that they understand where we're going and what we're doing, rather than activating their strengths, pulling in their perspective, bringing in the creativity that they offer and the insight and expertise that they offer. So if you're feeling like your leadership is stuck in autopilot, you might be in a strength blind spot. And I would invite you to book a leadership strategy call. If you are in one of those traps where you don't know what your strengths are, and you don't know how your perspective is different or how you can step into this perspective and understand others, book a leadership strategy call and let's figure out where your assumptions are helping or where they're hurting your impact. Let's talk about what you're normalizing too much and you're not leaning into your strengths. Let's talk about how stepping back and asking curious questions to your team can actually take some of the pressure off of you because you are not responsible for the whole project. You get to lead it, not have to carry it completely. And then just the idea, like my previous client, Lauren, who was constantly biting her tongue when really her strength was pointing out the elephant in the room, being able to say things that other people couldn't say in order to move things along. And so I just want to invite you to book a leadership strategy call, and I will see you there. Now, before I go, I have two things for you. One is if you have not left me a rating or review, I would really appreciate it. It helps others find the podcast. I've recently shifted the name, and so it just helps and brings the algorithm back to saying, oh, people want to listen to this. And it just also helps me understand and see what's resonating and what's not. And so it means a lot to me if you will do that. And then also, I just want to give you a quick heads up to next week's episode because it's a game changer. We're going to be talking about identity, and it's not about doing more. It's about becoming more. I'm going to share a simple phrase that radically shifted how I lead, how I show up, and even how often I go to the gym. Let's just say Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither is your identity. So don't forget to tune in next week. All right, friend? That's all I have. Bye for now. Choose joy until joy chooses you, and have a wonderful week. See you soon.